Hi, souls. Hey there. Thanks for joining me. So, what brings you here today? Let me guess. Is it because you read the title and something in you is perhaps questioning a belief you have? What if the beliefs you're most sure about aren't things you have chosen, but tidbits you picked up along the way? What if what you call truth is really something you learned to survive? And what if your mind has been holding onto certain beliefs simply because they once kept you safe, not because they still fit your life now? And what if those beliefs are still shaping your choices, your fears, and your relationships without you even realizing it? Did you know that beliefs shape how we interpret ourselves and the world? Stay with me. Welcome to Inner Library Alignment. I am Rachel Golden, the magical and luminous voice behind this space. Inner Library Alignment is the place where you are both the librarian and the author of your life. This is a space to wander the stacks of your soul, revise your stories, to align and rediscover your light. Today, we are exploring beliefs, the archived volumes stored deep in the subconscious, quietly organize the entire inner library. They are not always the books we remember choosing, nor the ones we recall checking out for the first time. Many of them were placed on the shelves before we could read the titles for ourselves, and yet they determine which aisles we walk down, which volumes we trust, and which stories we believe we are allowed to inhabit. Beliefs are not simply thoughts, they are conclusions. And let's just talk about how beliefs are formed. Most beliefs are written early. They formed through repetition and emotional charge. A tone of voice becomes a footnote. A look of disapproval becomes a margin note. Silence becomes a paragraph that stretches longer than it should. We learn not only from what is said aloud, but from what is implied, from what is rewarded, from what is punished, from what is ignored. Beliefs emerge where experience meets interpretation. When a conclusion helps us survive, belong, or remain safe, it tends to solidify. And over time, these early conclusions stop feeling like interpretations and begin to feel like the truth. For many of us, the first belief system we encounter is family. Long before we understand culture or society, we learn what is acceptable, rewarded, or discouraged within the household. Family teaches us how love is given or withheld, how conflict is handled, and what roles we are expected to play. And these lessons are rarely spoken outright. They are learned through tone, routine, silence, and response. In the inner library, family beliefs often become the earliest volumes shelved. They answer questions like, what keeps me connected? What risks rejection? Who am I allowed to be here? Because belonging is essential to survival. And these beliefs are preserved deeply, often without examination. What we learn in our families does not stay contained within the home. Those early rules about love, safety, and belonging are carried outward and mirrored back to us through culture. Culture reinforces and expands family beliefs by showing us how belonging works beyond our immediate circle. It shapes beliefs through racial and ethnic identity, national belonging, family lineage, professional environments, and collective histories of resilience, assimilation, achievement, or silence. Culture teaches us what is admired, what is discouraged, and which parts of ourselves must be emphasized or restrained to remain connected. And in the inner library, cultural beliefs answer ongoing questions. Who am I allowed to be here? What parts of me are welcomed? What must I suppress to belong? Because belonging remains tied to safety and survival. These beliefs are preserved deeply, often without conscious awareness. Over time, cultural beliefs can become indistinguishable from identity itself. They are not experienced as choices, but as just how things are. And because they are reinforced collectively, they are rarely questioned, only inherited, preserved, and passed on. As cultural rules of belonging settle into the body, religion often arrives as the language that gives those values moral shape and sacred meaning. Religion represents one of several pathways through which beliefs are established within the inner library across cultures and historical periods. Diverse belief systems have provided structured frameworks for meaning making, moral orientation, and social order. For some individuals, religious teachings functioned as primary sources of compassion, purpose, and belonging. For others, comparable belief structures developed through family socialization, cultural traditions, educational institutions, or broader social norms rather than formal religious affiliations. And as beliefs shift from meaning into measurement, education opens a new wing of the inner library, one organized by syllabi, assessments, and authority. Knowledge is cataloged, progress is tracked, and values are quietly encoded alongside instruction, sometimes through learning and sometimes through indoctrination. In this wing, school based beliefs are shelved as reference volumes about identity and worth. I am capable. I am behind. I matter when I perform. These books are checked out repeatedly through grades, rankings, and comparison, and many remain in circulation long after formal education ends, continuing to shape how individuals index their abilities, evaluate their potential, and determine where they believe they belong. And beyond the classroom, the inner library continues to be written by the wider society through stories we absorb, images we repeat, and norms we rarely question. They function like the most frequently circulated volumes in the inner library, signaling which stories are valued, whose voices are given prominence, and what a successful or acceptable life is meant to resemble. And through constant repetition, images, narratives, and cultural cues, beliefs about beauty, productivity, relationships, power, and belonging are reinforced. Because these messages are ambient and continuous, they rarely trigger conscious scrutiny. Cultural beliefs do not feel taught, they feel self evident. Over time, they quietly shape aspiration, self worth, and the fear of falling outside what is considered normal. As beliefs scale from shared culture to collective power, the inner library expands again. Beliefs are further shaped by nationhood, governance, and social hierarchy. Ideas about loyalty, authority, safety, and threat are transmitted through laws, history, education, and collective narratives, teaching us who belongs, who is protected, and who is considered expendable. In the inner library, these beliefs are often archived quietly. They shape fear, compliance, and identity without being experienced as personal choice. They remain preserved not because they are examined, but because they are normalized, circulating as unquestioned reference texts that define the boundaries of belonging and power. Across all of these systems, beliefs are not stored intellectually first. They are encoded through psychological experience, moments the nervous system registers as important. And when an experience carries emotional intensity, the mind creates meaning quickly. Its goal is not perfect accuracy, but orientation. how to understand what happened, and how to respond in the future. In that process, meaning condenses into belief. And sometimes the experience is painful. A betrayal becomes a belief about trust. A rejection becomes a conclusion about worth. And other times, experience is protective or affirming. Being supported can form I am safe. Being chosen can form I matter. And being heard can form my voice has value. In the inner library, these experience based beliefs become frequently consulted volumes because they were formed in moments that matter. They are not errors in thinking, but adaptive texts written to help us navigate life. The question is simply whether they still fit the chapter you are living now. And through a culmination of family, cultural, religion, education, and society and nationhood, some beliefs become limiting, not because they are wrong, but because they were formed under constraint. A limiting belief is not a passing idea. It is a preserved conclusion formed when safety mattered more than possibility. Once archived, these beliefs function less like opinions and more like internal rules. In the inner library, limiting beliefs are stored in the subconscious preservation vault. They answer protective questions such as how do I stay safe? How do I remain acceptable? And are consulted automatically, often without awareness. Many limiting beliefs sound practical. This is too expensive. I don't have enough time. Taking risk is not worth it. It's better to stay safe. Oh, I'm too old. It's too late to change my career. In the inner library, limiting beliefs are rarely challenged because they feel familiar and reliable. They have been referenced thousands of times. They have kept the system functioning, and so they remain preserved, not questioned. And over time, these beliefs stop feeling like beliefs and begin to feel like truth itself. And what makes them limiting is not their origin, but their persistence beyond usefulness, when protection quietly becomes restriction. To understand how limiting beliefs take root, it helps to see how they formed in a real inner library, my own. Many of my beliefs entered through a combined influence of family, culture, religion, education, and social systems, shaped by growing up Black in a predominantly white America. Some were taught directly, others were absorbed as unquestioned norms. And within this landscape, Black Christianity shaped how I made sense of my experiences as a child. Faith did not arrive as abstract theology, it arrived as explanation. It gave meaning to what my inner child did not yet have language for. I learned these beliefs through repetition, correction, and reward. Obedience was praised, so compliance felt like safety. Endurance was admired, so pain became something to carry quietly. Questioning was discouraged, so authority went unchallenged. Unfortunately, this was how I justified my abuse as a child. Fear became a test I was meant to pass. Suffering was framed as purposeful rather than wrong. Unmet needs were recast as lessons in patience, restraint, and dependence on God. Hardship was believed to strengthen faith and mirror Christ's suffering, pointing toward future redemption instead of present protection. Belief did not interrupt the harm, it organized it. It made abuse survivable without ever naming it as such. These beliefs were not taught to harm, they were taught to protect. But for a child, they became rules for endurance rather than pathways to care. Silence became instruction, endurance became an expectation, pain was spiritualized instead of tended to. I was also taught explicitly that Black people were not assumed to be intelligent, and that belief functioned like an outdated catalog entry I was expected to correct again and again. So I studied harder, prepared more, collected evidence, degrees, grades, and performance became citations I carried as though my intelligence required constant footnotes. Alongside achievement, there were rules about how to present myself. I was taught to speak a certain way, to soften my tone, to control my volume, to code switch fluently. I learned how I spoke would determine whether I was accepted, heard, dismissed, or disciplined. And then there were rules about appearance, too. I learned to wear my hair in ways that felt acceptable to the majority: neat, controlled, non threatening. Even my natural expression required editing. I also absorbed the expectation of being the strong Black woman, a volume shelved in the survival section. Strength meant endurance, carrying pain without complaint. Vulnerability felt restricted. Asking for help equated to being a failure, to being weak, and resilience was praised. Tenderness quietly muted. There were rules about movement as well. In stores, I learned not to linger or browse freely because curiosity could be misread as suspicion. I moved through aisles as if under surveillance, and there were lessons shaped by authority and fear. Around police, I learned a separate protocol because of my race. I was considered a threat. My body learned vigilance before language. It wasn't paranoia, it was preparation. In the inner library, all of this became reference volumes. Work harder, prove yourself, be careful, be controlled, carry it alone. These beliefs were not written because something was wrong with me. They were fireproof texts designed to survive environments that demanded constant self-regulation. And over time, these beliefs stopped feeling like strategies and began to feel like identity. Healing has meant recataloging, reorganizing which books were written for survival, which belong to history, and which no longer need to stay in circulation. Honoring what protected me does not require living by it forever. I am allowed to update the archive. I am allowed to choose which stories remain open on my desk. Beliefs change when they are revisited in a new context, one that includes safety, choice, and updated information. And this allows the inner library to revise what it once preserved for protection. And once awareness is present, revision becomes possible. It looks different from person to person. For some, through subconscious or reflective practices, such as meditation, prayer, somatic work, journaling, visualization, hypnotherapy, or spiritual reauthoring. For others, it unfolds through lived experience, such as sustained self-reflection. The method matters less than the moment a belief is reorganized as a draft rather than a fixed truth. Beliefs are not who you are. They are not absolute truth, and they are not moral verdicts, neither right nor wrong. They are conclusions formed in early chapters under different conditions. Revising a belief does not deny the past. It acknowledges that a chapter has ended. The book can remain, but it no longer needs to function as a rule book for the present. In the inner library, this is called re-shelving and realigning. Beliefs are not destiny, they are drafts, and you are not disloyal for revising them. You are the librarian now. You are allowed to question inherited texts and release stories that no longer fit who you are becoming. Before we leave, just pause. Notice the belief that feels unquestionable. Ask where it came from and consider what might change if it were no longer the book you reached for first. Your inner library is alive and your story is still being written. If this episode stirred something in you, let it linger. You do not need to fix anything. Just notice which beliefs you've been living inside. And if you feel called to continue this work, stay with me, subscribe, share this episode with someone ready to align, and keep revising your inner library, one book, one chapter, one page, one line, and one golden truth at a time.